Brampton MPP ਅਤੇ Minister of Bail Reforms ਅਤੇ Auto Theft Graham McGregor ਨਾਲ Minister, good morning.
Good morning and Sat Shri Akal, Namaskar, Assalamu Alaikum to the audience. Thanks for having me on the show.
So the debate on, you're continuing the debate on bail reforms, and what specific bail reforms are you advocating for? Because you wrote a letter to federal government, and what prompted you to focus on these particular changes?
So one of the things that we're hearing from families in Peel region and across Ontario is that they're frustrated with criminals being allowed out on bail again and again and again. We had an individual at the start of October shoot a Toronto police officer while being investigated, who was out on bail for over 24 offenses, including license plate tampering, stolen cars, but also multiple breaking and enterings. We've seen time and time again in Peel region, 50% of individuals that they arrest for violent crimes are actually out on bail while they're committing those violent crimes. So what we did was look at why is this happening, and the reason why this is happening is because the criminal code was changed 5 years ago to apply the least restrictive forms of bail possible. So when a criminal is hauled in front of a judge or a JP, they have to apply the least restrictive form of bail possible. What we have been talking to the federal government about is what kind of changes can they make to the criminal code. They've asked us to be more direct in what we're asking for. So that's what we did yesterday. Myself, the Solicitor General, Michael Kersner, we wrote a letter asking for a few things. One, taking away the ability for an individual to receive bail when charged with very serious crimes. So these are crimes like murder, terrorism, home invasions, carjackings, possession of an illegal firearm. We think if you're charged with a serious offense like these, you should be held on remand, not let out into the community to recommit more crimes. We've also asked for the implementation of a 3-strike rule for all crimes, where if an individual is continually breaching their bail conditions and they're continually being arrested by police and being hauled in front of a judge again and again and again, by the third time that they're doing it, they shouldn't be out. Bail shouldn't be an option. They should be held on mandatory remand. So this will be for some of those still serious, but maybe not quite as serious offenses. So those are things like stolen cars out of the driveway or other crimes like that. We've also asked for the reestablishment of mandatory minimum sentencing for some crimes. For example, before the Liberal government took office in Ottawa, before Justin Trudeau came into power, you used to face a mandatory minimum of 3 years for having an illegal firearm, minimum. We've seen that stripped away. We've seen that taken away. So we've asked for this and a few other stipulations that we put in the letter. Really what we've put together here is what we need from the federal government in terms of legal changes to make sure that when police are enforcing the law, that criminals are actually locked up behind bars, not let out into the community again to act with impunity.
Minister Arif Virani, he responded to your proposal yesterday, and he said all these changes that you're talking about, they have charter implications. You cannot make these changes because these are in contradiction with our charter rights. How would you respond to those?
Yeah. So I met with Minister Virani in Yellowknife 2 weeks ago, and I raised a lot of these concerns with them. And I'll tell you, it wasn't only me raising concerns about bail. 12 other provinces and territories have been raising concerns about bail, and many of them were at that table where we all raised our concerns with the criminal code. I would say I've read the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and I ask anybody in the audience that's listening to the interview. It's a document that's pretty easy to see on Google. It's a quick Google search to look at the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. There's a section in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that says every Canadian has a fundamental right to reasonable bail, right? And when you look at the situation I described earlier about the gentleman that shot a Toronto cop, I mean, this is a guy that had done multiple breaking and enters. He had multiple license plates stolen. We had a situation where a gentleman in Markham I say a gentleman, a scumbag in Markham, frankly, was arrested on sexual assault. 2 weeks later, while he was out on bail, was arrested for sexual assault again. Right? We saw the woman in Mississauga who was arrested for stealing a car, ran over the homeowner in the car, was let out on bail, and then arrested again, and then let out on bail again for another offense. So when you look at these stories, it's hard for me to see how this is reasonable, right? So, I appreciate that the judges have their own opinions about these things, and that they weighed in. I would put that judges are supposed to work for the people. They're supposed to work for the taxpayers, not the other way around. So I really think they should take a second look at what they're considering reasonable, because the situation you see in our neighborhoods right now is anything but reasonable. And minupata, twanupata, sarinupata.
Minister, but we in our country, even people who commit crimes, they also have charter rights. That's a genuine concern.
Absolutely, but I guess the situation that I said, so the charter right we're talking about is reasonable bail. Do you think it's reasonable for somebody to be hauled in on multiple breaking and entering charges, 24 other offenses, and be let out on bail later that day? Is that reasonable?
And Minister also said that he invited you for in-person meeting on these reforms, and you did not accept his invitation.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's talking about. I met him in Yellowknife 2 weeks ago. So he sent the letter asking for a meeting. We went to Yellowknife. We met him with all the other provinces and territories. We outlined our concerns very clearly, and I thought very respectfully. We saw the federal government try to make moves on this with a law they call Bill C-48, which took effect at the start of 2024, and it moved us a little bit in the right direction with some reverse onus and kind of technical changes. What our position is, what Ontario government, what we said at that meeting in person in Yellowknife, was that we need to be more ambitious than Bill C-48. We need to be more ambitious than just looking at reverse onus changes. We can't allow criminals to be, and suspected criminals to be let out time and time again. I'm not saying that nobody should get bail ever, but of the cases that I've described to you, frankly, the pendulum has swung so far in the direction of the rights of the accused over the rights of Ontario families and Brampton families and Peel families to feel safe. It's just gotten ridiculous. We had a provincial carjacking task force last year, right, that laid charges on 124 individuals. Half of them were out on bail before we even laid the charges, never mind the individuals that are let out on bail after. So this revolving door, I appreciate everybody has rights, but what about the rights of Ontario citizens to feel safe in their homes?
And this is my last question. There are some reports that the Ontario jails are overcrowded, and the province is not doing its part to improve Ontario's jails.
Who made that report?
There are several media reports.
Yeah, so we hear this from the media. We hear this from the opposition. We've heard this from the Liberal government, saying that basically the conditions in Ontario jails are not appropriate. I've visited Ontario's correctional facilities. I would never want to be there. I would never want to, certainly would never want to commit a crime and be held as an inmate. But for anybody to say that the conditions are inhumane, frankly, is just inaccurate. Our message is clear. If the criminal code and judges will order Ontario to hold somebody in jail, we have space for them.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you for your time today.
All right. Thank you, sir.